All right, so what we're going to be looking at is through the lock entry. So we're going to just start with some of the tools that we're going to use. So traditionally, in our set of irons, what we'll have, you may have an A tool or a K tool. Either one is designed and works basically the same way. So typically with a K tool, you have the actual K tool. You have the device to operate the latch with. Both of those are, and normally we have a shove knife. This is usually, works pretty well. We'll review that a little later, but it works pretty well with these latches as long as this keeper stop isn't secured properly during the installation. And there's a couple ways that we can defeat that. This is certainly an easy tool to use. Doesn't always work though. Some other things that we can use is having a wedge. That helps us a lot, especially if we're dealing with this style latch with the keeper. This is just another modified shove knife. A pair of channel locks or vice grips, either one works. I do like using channel locks because I basically have a duplication of this tool. It's a good tool in general to keep in your pocket, and then on the other end just kind of file it down, that way you have, or grind it down, that way you actually have a little flat pry surface. There's also a J-hook, a pretty effective tool. This is typically used anytime we have panic hardware. You're able to slide it in between the double doors, turn and actuate that panic hardware and open it. Another thing this is really effective for, which we won't be demonstrating, is you can actually use this if you have a motion sensor with an electromagnet at the top. You can actually take a J-hook, slide it in between that gap, go all the way to the top, wiggle it back and forth in front of that sensor. Works pretty well for that as well. And we're also going to talk about if there is a security bar over the keeper, over the latch. A simple piece of weed eater string can be a pretty effective tool. So we're going to review all that and how we can use it. It is good to have a Halligan handy just to help us gap. And sometimes when we can access that gap a little bit easier, it makes things better for us. All right, so what we're going to be looking at on a commercial side, most of the time we're going to have a cylinder lock. Now we could also have a rim lock, and they present pretty similarly from the when we're looking at the face of the lock. This is a cylinder lock, and basically what that means, it's a threaded cylinder and it screws in. And so this is the mortise lock, basically what we're dealing with. And you can see here it has threads. So that cylinder lock literally screws in place there, and it actuates this, which then throws our latch, and it can even have a device to throw a security bar both up and down. We'll look at that a little more later. We also have what's called rim locks. Rim locks can look pretty similar from the exterior, but the rim lock has screws that pull through on both sides. Where this really makes a difference for us is this can be pulled with an A tool or a K tool. If you've been taught the technique of using a pair of channel locks or pliers, you're going to be able to pretty easily grab onto that cylinder lock and twist it, and that's going to break that set screw. That's not going to be the case with a rim lock. So what we're going to do is kind of take a look here. So Ross, if you don't mind taking that plate off. So we have basically a protector plate here, and behind it is the inset of where our mortise lock sits in place.
Just these two?
Yeah, it should be the bottom one too. So, this little plate pops out here, and behind that we have the inset of our mortise lock. And if you look right here, that little screw right there, there's one on either side, those are our set screws. And when we grab on to this cylinder lock and we bite down and turn, what we're doing is breaking those loose. So we'll go ahead and demonstrate that on another prop. So when we're looking at the mortise lock, what we're looking at is this set screw right here that extends in, and we showed you that a little earlier. So what we're gonna try to do is we're gonna grab, obviously we'll be grabbing more of the exterior here, we'll bite and turn, but we've already kind of damaged this one a little. This happens to be a blank. They can come in all sorts of different ways. Basically, there's this little plate that covers it. It can free spin, or you can bite. If you bite down hard enough, you'll be able to turn the whole cylinder regardless of whether that's on there or not. You might be able to even break it loose. What you want to do is turn it, and you just saw there, it sheared off that little pin to keep that, and it basically goes in this channel here. Once it's loose, we can hand spin it out because that's all gone. At this point, you're able to use whatever if you have the tool that's in your iron set, or if you have some other little modified tool, you can reach in, push down, and what you're trying to actuate is this right here. So you push down, and then once it's down, you turn. And so we're going to come over here to this other side right here and take a look. So this one has what I was talking about a little earlier, where basically off of the bottom, sometimes it can have it off the top as well, is an actuator that's going to send and lock the top and the bottom. And so you can see when we push down and rotate how it pushes this down, and it actually locks into usually the bottom frame of the threshold and at the top as well. And so that defeats all three of those locks without much effort at all. It's important to realize that there is a difference though. If you're dealing with a cylinder lock, it can be easily defeated with a pair of channel locks or a pair of vice grips. If, however, it is a rim lock, we're definitely going to have to use either some type of puller, a K tool, an A tool. And what we're going to do is bite down on that cylinder, and you can see how it gets wedged down in there, and we pry it away. That does, if you do, it can be used on a cylinder lock as well. It just kind of pulls the threads out, and usually we're able to put that back in place. If we perform that on a rim lock, what it's going to do, bite down, and it's usually going to pull, sometimes it'll pull the head straight through, sometimes it'll break these, or it might even pull out the threads in here. But what you'll find is, there's a screw here, there's a screw here, and you're just not going to be able to turn this with those threads. You may be able to snap it off, but it's usually it's actually tubed and keyed for this, so it would be very difficult to defeat that. So next what we're going to look at is some of the other style of locks that we could have. This is kind of a traditional, basically what you would see at a home or an interior door. Sometimes we do see these in a commercial setting. The most important thing to realize is on the latch actuates freely as long as this security tab is not depressed. So if that security tab is depressed and it's caught in the keeper of the door, so if the door's installed properly, this is going to be pushed back. If that's pushed back, it prevents us from being able to actuate the latch. So there's a couple ways we can defeat that. We're going to take a look right now. All right, so what we can see here is we have the security device here, which you can see right in there. And this door was not really installed properly. So since we can see that this security device is extended all the way, we know that we're going to be able to actuate that latch. So we can just put it in, behind, turn, you can see it's clear, and open the door. And that one's one of the easiest things for us to do. Anytime that security latch isn't engaged, life is made a lot easier for us. So another thing that we're looking at, if that keeper device is secured incorrectly, it can be a little harder. So what we have to do, you can use a wedge, and you're gonna need some kind of pry tool. So this is where, if you're able to get the Halligan in, drive it in just a little bit. You can go ahead and start to gap it. Once you capture the gap near the lock, secure that gap that you've got with a wedge, reach in behind, and as long as we've got enough of a gap with that, it's gonna work. If we can't get this to push out enough, one of the things that we can do is we can either push it in or pull it out to try to get that keeper to be a little more forgiving for us. And sometimes simply applying a little pressure to the door will work, where we're able to push it in and get it past that keeper. So what we're gonna do is take a look at this keeper right now. So basically this piece right here is designed to stop, basically to push that security device back and prevent that latch from being thrown. So if we're able to push it past here so that that security device is in here, we're able to sweep in behind and open up the door. So here we have a security plate. This is basically designed to prevent us from going in with our shove knife. We really can't reach in and get behind there. The door's secured. But one of the things that we can do, and this is probably a pretty easy piece of equipment to keep in your gear, is we can take a little piece of weed eater string. We can fish it in behind. The important thing here is to get behind that latch. Once you come through, grab it on the other side. This one happens to have a little loop in it. You put it around that door handle, and a simple pull will open it. And basically that's just doing the same thing that shove knife did. The important thing is when you feed this around, to make sure that you get behind the latch. If obviously if you end up in front of it, it's not going to work. So that's a pretty effective method. If the security device right there is keeping the keeper or the latch from being able to be thrown, remember you can try to push in. You can try to create a little bit more gap there. And another thing is to remember that if this security plate is set higher or lower, try to make sure you can work around where this is. So if this was set instead of here, if it was set here, I could work underneath it, and vice versa if it was higher. So the last thing we're going to look at is deadbolts. Deadbolts can be difficult to defeat without causing damage. So there is one thing that we can have going for us. When a deadbolt is fully extended, it locks in place. However, if the deadbolt, so right now, if I hit on this, it's not going anywhere. If the deadbolt is not fully extended, if there's any kind of play or gap, which would come from basically improper installation, or if someone just didn't throw the key or the latch all the way, it's very easy to move. So you could even come in with your shove knife or pry tool, you can bite the side and move it back, defeating a deadbolt. It certainly doesn't work all the time, and it's kind of a long shot, but if you have the time, you're not trying to make a rapid forcible entry, and you're trying to do through the lock with minimal damage, it's a good option to try.